Thanks for checking out this show review. This is for the 2024 Netflix show Parasyte the Gray. And I don't do a whole lot of show reviews just because usually I don't have a ton of time to do that. Instead, I'm doing individual movie reviews. But I ended up having some time off from work, and I heard really good things about this. I had seen the trailer for it before it came out, and it looked great to me, so I was planning to get to it. Shout out to the Movie Detective, subscriber, the Movie Detective, because I had this on my list to get to relatively soon, but then he let me know that he saw it and it was great, and so I bumped it up my list and got it taken care of earlier, and man, did it pay off so great. I highly, highly, highly recommend this show. If you've seen the trailer or you've read a synopsis of it or just know a little bit about it, if it seems interesting to you, take that ride. It is awesome. This is a great show. Do not miss it. Again, it's on Netflix now. This one's created by Hitoshi Iwaaki, who did previous Parasyte anime shows, because yes, this is based off a manga, which was then made into some anime shows, which now is getting a live action version right here. And it looks like they may end up doing some more potentially, especially if it does well on Netflix. So we'll see. Directed by Yeon Sang-ho, and some people may say, oh, that name sounds familiar. Well, yeah, it's because this individual did Train to Busan. This individual directed every episode of the show. It shows because it looks phenomenal. He does an amazing job. If you liked how Train to Busan looks, you're going to love how this looks too. So, he also did Train to Busan Peninsula, Hellbound, and Psychokinesis, just to name a few. Obviously, this is a South Korean series, so it is subtitled. But even if you have trouble with subtitles, or you're not a big fan of subtitles, just take this ride. It is so worth it. It is 6 episodes. Each episode is no longer than an hour, basically. Most of them are like 40-some minutes, like upper 40 minutes to like lower 50-some minutes. Very doable. So, quick synopsis of it. It's basically about these parasites that come to Earth and start infecting people. So yes, it's kind of a la the Body Snatchers, but it's very different, has its own take on things. And they start infecting people, things are going wrong, and there is a government team called the Gray that are supposed to try to neutralize this threat and figure out what's going on. So there is an investigative element to it. There is some action elements to this, and there's some really great action sequences to it. But there are a lot of characters involved with this, especially in the first episode. They hit you with a lot of different characters, so it does feel like they're throwing a lot at you at once. But just know that it does settle down after that first episode, and you start to really understand, okay, this is this person, and they end up coming together. So it does come together in a really great way, and everything meshes really well. So at first it's a little bit confusing because you're like, man, they're throwing a lot at me right now. Very worth it, though. That's all I'm going to say synopsis-wise, because I don't want to give much away about it. It is great. An important question is posed immediately in the show, and then they waste no time having some wild stuff go down. They do a great job of immediately setting up this kind of philosophical question, which is a pretty important one. I'm not going to say what it is right now, but then they end up jumping into some stuff that really hooks you in. That's like, wow, this is wild. This stuff is ridiculous, and I cannot wait to see what goes on. It's a really interesting action sequence, and it just really grabs your attention and makes you really want to know what is going on here. Where are we going with this show? There's plenty of CGI in it, which looks pretty solid. I mean, CGI is always going to not look great, at least to someone like me, but I think they do a pretty good job with what they need to do with it. There's a lot of CGI in this, so if you hate CGI, I'm sorry. You should stick through it, though. Like, tough it out, because it is still worth it. But it looks pretty good for what it is. It's shot extremely well. It is extremely stylish. One thing that I put in my notes was I really hope that the camera person got paid extremely well, because how active this camera person had to be in many sequences, ridiculous. There are some really interesting, very engaging action sequences where the camera is all over the place, like following in like a chase scene, and the angles that they hit and how quickly it has to move. It is impressive. This show looks phenomenal. So if you're into the visuals, this is definitely one to do it too. The performances are really good, and the characters on top of that are very interestingly written. These are all interesting characters that you actually can understand where they're coming from, and there are some sequences that give you some flashbacks that give you, more depth into them so you understand them even more. So, writing interesting characters is a huge thing with movies and shows, and they do a great job with that. And then on top of that, if you have the actors who can really pull it off, which they do for this show, even better. There are some pretty intense action sequences, like I already said, with the camera work, some really wild ones. Extremely entertaining, very intense, like edge of your seat type action sequences where you're just like, wow, this is top quality cinema. Yeah, definitely. They really keep things moving because there's a good amount that's actually going on here. There's a lot of intrigue to it. Like I said, there's a bit of an investigative aspect. There's a whole lot of... It's a chess match in a lot of the film of like, what is this side doing? What is this side doing? And there are a lot of kind of twists and turns that end up going on in it. Some that I really did not see coming, and I always love that. When it's not predictable, that's wonderful. Now, that said, if you've seen the anime or you've read any of the manga, maybe you will know what's going on. I haven't read any of the manga or seen any of the anime, so yeah, if you've already seen it, you might know. But anyone going in blind on it, you're not going to know. I hope the camera person was paid very well because they were all over the place, like I said. The score does go a bit too hard at times. Actually, there are plenty of times where the score goes too hard. This is just a thing for me personally. I'm always going to call it out when I see it in films, but I'm more into like a more restrained score. I think it actually works better for films, but especially with the action sequences, the score is like screaming at you, and I just don't think you really need that. So that's one of my biggest issues with the show is the score should have been, the volume of it basically should have been taken down a notch. Also, the intensity of it probably should have been taken down some notches, but it does start to get kind of slow towards the end, which is really weird because this the show has really good pacing throughout. And then you get to, I think maybe like the end of the 5th episode and then into the beginning of the 6th episode and into the middle. And it feels like it really starts to slow down, which is very odd because for it to be moving at such a good pace prior to that and then it's really starting to slow down, it just feels weird, and it feels like it's slowing down at the wrong time when it really needs to be amping up even more. That said, it's not slow for too long, and when they kick things back up, they do it in a major way, and it is a very engaging and thrilling ending to the show. It really pays dividends. This is a satisfying show. This is a very satisfying show, and I really can't recommend it enough. One other issue I had was this. There's a character that makes a hard to understand decision in the end portion of the final episode. It's probably around 20 minutes or so left in the final episode, and there's one character makes this decision, and I was like, I understand what they're trying to do with this decision that this character's making, but right now it feels inappropriate and it feels forced. And I mean inappropriate as in for what's going on with the character. It seems like something they wouldn't think to do right then. Maybe later, but at the moment they do it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So that's another thing that's just kind of like, I don't understand why they're doing this. But other than that, the writing's really good and they pulled it off extremely well. Again, a very thrilling and satisfying ending with a final scene that is mainly for people who are familiar with the Parasyte manga and or anime. It is something I needed to look up to understand what it was, because it's one of those things where like they put so much emphasis on that final scene that you're like, having not, done the anime or the manga and seeing how they made this seems so important. I know it's important based off of the series, but only having seen this, I don't know what it is. So I had to Google it, and I was like, okay, I get why that's important. So it's cool. Do look it up if you don't know it. It's worth it. This is a pretty old story told in a new way. Like I said in the beginning, that it's basically a take on Invasion of the Body Snatchers to a degree, with a lot of other stuff thrown in. But yeah, this is a great way of taking old material, updating it, and making it something new and unique, which there are a lot of movies and shows nowadays that take that old material and they don't do much new with it. They don't do much interesting with it, and this actually does that. So the next two things I'm going to say are thematic things within the film. So if you don't want to know any thematic stuff, because that can be very spoilery for people, you can go ahead and stop the review right here. But I will say before you do that, out of 5 stars, half stars in play, this is a 4.5-star rating for me. Highly recommend. It's not perfect, but it is really good. Really, really good. High recommend. All right, so you can go ahead and log off. And then here we go. Thematically, it speaks to how people can be wronged by others but can find strength in still trusting that there is good in humanity. And I think this is an important message right now for people, because there are a lot of people who see what's going on in the news, what's going on in world events, what's going on in events in your community or just in your country, wherever you are. And people are increasingly angry. People are increasingly negative. And this show does a really good job of kind of pointing out, hey, you know, you can be disappointed in people. You can have people who hurt you. But in the end, don't lose trust in humanity having goodness in it. So I love the fact that they do bake that in there. It also speaks to the dangers of those who seek power and use others to form an organization to do their bidding under the guise of caring about those people. And I know that this is something that's also has always been going on with humanity in the world, and is currently going on with humanity in the world, where someone will emerge and say, I will lead you people if you will organize under me and get you what you need or take care of you. And that's not what their goal is. It is to feed themselves. It is to gain power for themselves. It is to do for themselves and their cronies. And that's all that it is. So it puts that front and center as well, which is very important because there's a lot of that going on. But like I said, that's been going on for like all of humanity's time, basically, unfortunately. And I don't think we're ever going to get away with it or get away from it, unfortunately. So yeah. But anyway, again, wonderful. 4.5 stars out of 5. I do greatly recommend this. If you want to talk spoilers about it, you can in the comments. We can go ahead and do that. Do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I appreciate that support. You can thumbs up on the videos, also helps me with the YouTube algorithm, and you can hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. But regardless, thanks so much for taking your time to watch this video, and until next time, keep it brutal.